unbuttoned on your shirt, you got the merit, etc. So he finally did better his second year, and he gradually improved his grades to the point where he graduated second in his class as a brevet second lieutenant. And you were a brevet second lieutenant until there was an opening, until somebody died or retired above you, and then you could then be promoted. That's how promotion worked in those days. Then the next 4 years he spent at what I would call postgraduate artillery schools. He was a second lieutenant in the 2nd Artillery. He was fortunate because he was a brevet second lieutenant one day, and then the same day he got promoted immediately to a second lieutenant. That didn't always happen to officers. Well, after 2 years, or 4 years rather, at these various artillery schools, 2 years at each, he came back to the academy as an assistant tactical instructor. Now, the tactical instructors helped with the drill on the plane at West Point, and they also had the great misfortune of having to live in the barracks. So they were living in the barracks with the cadets, and they were there to, kind of be like den mothers, if you will. Make sure they're in bed at the right time, make sure there's no smoking in the room, make sure that there was enough wood for the fireplace, make sure they were taking care of that so they didn't burn the place down, etc., etc. Now, the most interesting cadet they had at that time was a fellow by the name of Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe was hell on wheels. I mean, I can't say it any other way. He was terrible. His most notable event, among others, I mean, there was a rumor that he killed one of the tactical instructors, which wasn't true. But he went to a parade, inspection, if you will, dressed in his accoutrements, and that's all. No uniform, naked except for the sash and the sword, and that got him thrown out of the school. Interesting sidelight is that fellow there, Sylvanus Thayer, the father of West Point, and the leading engineering school in the country at this time, got Poe started on his literary career. We'll talk about that after if you want to pursue that. After a couple years as a tactical instructor, Smith got an opportunity to work for as adjutant to Superintendent Sylvanus Thayer, who was the father of West Point, highly regarded. And West Point, again, at this time, was the premier engineering school. Anybody know what the next engineering school to show up was? It's in New York. RPI was the next one, the second oldest engineering school. But that's primarily what this school was about. It was controlled, and the oversight of the school was by the Corps of Engineers. And if you were a student, like Robert E. Lee, who graduated second in his class, you would become an engineer. So it's engineers, then artillery, then maybe cavalry, and then infantry. To show you how bad a student Grant was, he wanted to be in the cavalry. He was a great horseman. He ended up in the infantry. He just didn't care about school. After serving as Thayer's adjutant, Smith got the highly prized post as Commandant of Cadets. And the Commandant of Cadets taught the senior capstone course in tactics and was involved in the daily drill and the summer camp on the plain. So he was teaching these folks the school of the soldier. And there's about 100 students that he taught during the time he was commandant who became general officers in the American Civil War. This is just a few of them, and you can see there's some very distinguished gentlemen on the list. Sherman, Reynolds, who was killed at Gettysburg, George Thomas, of course, Grant, etc. And then even a few officers on the other side were there, because they were all friends at that time and buddies, and they knew each other. Well, after several years at the academy, being commandant, he was turned loose into the real world, if you will, and this was 1845, and was sent to Texas to be part of the Army of Observation, to make sure that the Mexicans realized that Texas was now a state in the United States, and to not do anything to create a problem. A war resulted, the Mexican War. Smith served in that war in every battle save two. He was involved with Zachary Taylor, old Rough and Ready, in two battles in Texas. One of the battlefields you can still see if you venture down to South Padre Island, and that's Palo Alto, tall trees. And then another battle on Resaca del Palma that he was involved in, and I've actually got a map of his report of his service in that battle in the book, an original map that he drew. My dear daughter, I send you a few lines just to say goodbye, for I shall start on my march at daylight on Tuesday next. I am sorry poor Alan has been sick, and wish very much he was with me. I would put him on a pony and make him tough, and that would make him robust and manly. I had a letter from your Aunt Anna yesterday, in which she speaks of you as such a nice, good girl. You don't know how it delights me to hear always such good accounts of you. I send $1 herewith, divided between Lizzie, who was her cousin, and yourself. Get ice cream or something else. Don't give it all to the church. So Smith goes up to the Red River of the North, and he informs the trappers and hunters in Canada that Hudson Bay Company area not to cross the border and hunt in the United States. You know, like there's that invisible dotted line that they're not supposed to cross. Folks at Hudson Bay Company thought that was very amusing. He also went and communicated with the Indians and wrote several delightful letters to his daughter describing the appearance and cleanliness of these Indians who he met, and basically told them to behave themselves and be good boys and girls and not attack other tribes, and you know, Uncle Sam, the great white father in Washington, was going to give you farm implements so you could be farmers. So he comes back. It's an incredible. Arrives on the scene, and Smith goes over to explain a mission that he has for Wallace, which involves capturing a bridge called Wallace's Bridge, which Smith finds very amusing. After the discussion and explanation, Smith is getting into a yawl to take him back to his flagship, the Continental, and he slips and falls and has a terrible gash in his leg from his knee to his ankle. Now, you will read about this as being a minor injury, sometimes a minor injury to his foot. This was a cut to the bone. Smith hobbles around his cabin on the Continental and making arrangements, getting troops in place on really both sides of the river. Thankfully, Grant is restored to command, partly because Abraham Lincoln tells Halleck to put up or shut up, and Grant comes down very distressed to find that Smith is ailing and not getting any better. Grant is forced to relieve Smith of command of his division because he can't take to the field, and puts in his place W.H.L. Wallace, no relation to Lew. Well, eventually Smith goes to the Cherry Mansion in Savannah, Tennessee, on the eastern side of the river. And there he shares a compartment with Grant. So they have adjoining bedrooms. And Smith is lamed up, but still talking to Grant on a nightly basis, presumably giving him fatherly advice. Smith spends the Battle of Shiloh in bed. Initially he says, oh, it's only a minor skirmish, and then when the sounds get louder and louder, he says, there may be something a little bigger. And as he writes to his wife, the Battle of Armageddon has taken place. Well, Smith does not get better, and Halleck eventually says, I'm going to let you go home to recover. And Smith writes his last letter to Grant. I like this letter. I like it more because of what's going on now in our world, as you'll see in a moment. I shall leave here in a few days, and doubt if the accidents of life shall throw us together again. But I trust you will believe to the fullest extent my sense of appreciation of the kindness and consideration I have ever received at your hands during our service together in this land of Egyptian darkness. If you want me to explain more about that, please ask that question. I do not know that I should attempt to express myself thus if I did not think I perceived in the newspaper press a studied attempt on the part of other politicians to strike down your well-deserved honors. I do not know what your aspirations for the future may be, but there is evidently a class of political intriguers who join to some of your friends thinking you an available candidate for the presidency would seek to place you in that office. I must confess, I think too well of you as a modest Christian gentleman to run the gauntlet for the office. Still, success attend you in that or any other line you may desire.